Now, my cat is licking himself. I don't know how audible that's gonna be on recording. Hello, YouTube. Um, Today I am talking with the author Anne, that is also a Paimon devotee, and she has a last name that only an Irish person can pronounce. So feel free to introduce yourself.
Um, I'm Anne O'Donoghue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's how you say
so
it.
yeah, like it's not too difficult, thankfully. But I know how it is with Irish names. It's like Neve. What? It's an
That
M and a H. Why does it make a V sound?
that's not too difficult.
Hmm.
Was it O'Doney or O'Donoghue?
O'Donoghue.
O'Donoghue.
Yeah,
Wow, that
that's
would take practice. How does it
I'm
feel to
sorry.
have an Irish name?
It feels relevant. I am Irish, so there is that. I'm
Uh,
fine with it.
you sure about that? No, nobody ever asks you how to understand what you just said.
Sometimes, but it's okay. I'll explain.
I mean, it's why I just kind of. Well, first I threw my Lithuanian name in the garbage by getting married, but then I also took a pen name that's very incredibly easy.
I suppose I could have done that too.
It's okay. It makes you unique, very Irish. Maybe Irish people would like to buy you more now. Um,
Oh, by me as a person, I will be in your handbag forever.
okay. Um, no, Dad. No, I meant buy it stuff, but I'm having a migraine. You're having a migraine. This is a great video.
It's fine. It's okay. We'll
so,
roll with it. Unless you don't want to, that's fine too.
going to more relevant things than buying a singular and to keep in your handbag for forever. Um, what it is that you're currently practicing occult wise?
Cult-wise, I am practicing mainly chaos magic and demonology. That's not just with sigil magic, but I've carried things over from eclectic kind of Kemetic and Celtic system, I suppose influences to a degree. So those have been with me for a long time. And then in the background, there is some kitchen witchery.
Yeah, I was about to say that you just throw your background in the garbage.
No, it's still there, thankfully.
Because you said in your book that you started with Wicca and kitchen witchery. Did Wicca phase out over time?
Yeah, this is where things get uninteresting, sorry. Usually, with Wicca, it came at a very young age. Thankfully, in the bookstore that was very local to my school, they did not know where to put occult books, so I was able to say, "Oh, that's a nice symbol," and I picked up a book, which I still have actually, because it was the first one on the topic I ever got, which turned out to be Wicca. Explain tools and whatnot, and just kind of representation symbolism. And as I went through it, like down the line, I didn't really resonate with much of it. So I just discarded it. I fell in love with, well, I never, in school, everyone's either into dinosaurs or space or something. But spiritual wise, I was very into Kemetic practices, ancient Egyptian stuff. So it was very nice then to say, hey, this is actually something I resonate with, although very loosely and in an eclectic kind of manner. I just kind of drew influences from that as well. And of course, I wasn't doing processions every day. I wasn't doing rituals from like ancient Egyptian orthodoxy, if it even exists. Because everything was pretty local to different areas. They had specific, deities and whatnot. And I did work with Sekhmet for a very long time before kind of that just kind of gently went away then, but the practices did not. I do still carry over, like, correspondences with colors and whatnot. Those are still there, which were very easy to actually implement into demonology and whatnot, thankfully. And, excuse me, kitchen witchery never went away, thankfully, because it's very applicable. You can use it whenever, and it's just whenever saying, "Hey, I want to make my coffee now. Let me just insert a little, symbol here for protection or abundance, and I can get started with the day."
So, when you say that you were a child, I'm gonna assume that they did not
Like
place
8.
those books inside children's books section because
Oh, no, for some reason, they put it very close to the door. So when you walked in and you just went left, it's like, "Oh, those are very strange symbols." And then kinda next to it, there, fiction, because the children's section was way in the back thing, that and the teenagers, adolescent books were beside it. So the occult books were very much in the forefront and very minimal
that
in
was very
the amount.
progressive of them.
Yeah,
Like,
because I was, like, 8. And it's just like, I was like 8, and then it's just like about 12, then I started really kind of getting into it.
and no one stopped you from buying it as well.
No,
They didn't
the
go, "Oh, this is definitely not for children. Put it down."
no, the lady behind the counter just kind of looked and was just like, "All right, well, this is how much it costs." And we made the exchange, and I took it home.
And if you had an Egyptian phase as a child, does that mean you were super into Yu-Gi-Oh?
No, I was very much into Pokemon. I did not bother with Yu-Gi-Oh! Strangely enough. All I know about it is memes.
Because that's the one thing that I remember. That there was a show that had a kid that was also a pharaoh question mark that played card games, which is kind of Egyptian themed, except the card game bit, though.
Yeah, like, from memes, it's just like, "Oh, cool, it's got a pyramid. Oh, it's got the eye too, that's nice symbolism. Okay, I'm done." Like
Okay, I don't want to touch this. This isn't fun.
Basically, yeah, I suppose.
I suppose I can understand that because it's weird. When I started touching demonology, a lot of like horror movie enjoyment kind of went out of the window. So like
Right?
you would think that it's a similar theme, but my brain was just like, "Oh, cool, I'm not interested in that."
Hmm. Do you think it was, like, demonology had an influence on you in that way, like like a entity, maybe?
Oh,
It's just like saying,
absolutely.
yeah,
Um,
I get that entirely.
I'm absolutely certain that Lucifer curates my entertainment media selection. To be
Well,
fair,
that's
life has
nice.
become a lot more peaceful after I disposed of some potential lines of entertainment and took up on others. Because when you're just watching happy people being very passionate about what they do, it brings happy feelings, you know?
Yeah, that is true. When you see it's very, it's like, if you see something that's negative, you're gonna be more inclined to be a lot more negative as a result.
Yeah,
It rubs off of you, like,
you
onto you.
you don't want to stress yourself. You don't want to annoy yourself. And for my heart's sakes, I don't really like scaring myself.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Outside
Uh,
of games like Faith, which is just like, I don't think I would consider that to be much of a horror outside of a couple of jump scares.
yeah, to be honest, without the cutscenes, I don't know how I would feel about it. The
Uh,
cutscenes make it.
did the cutscenes change your opinion of it?
If you were to play the game and just remove the cutscenes, sorry, I'm a little sick as well. Excuse me. But, without the cutscenes, I don't think it's as interesting, basically.
To be fair, without cutscenes, it wouldn't have a story.
You can tell the story without cutscenes.
Oh, I mean, you can read them
Lord
papers,
Doom.
but yeah, it would be pretty weird now that you
Yeah, it
mention
would
it.
be.
Just
Yeah.
a never-ending priest walking in an 8-bit background. Would get
I
meditative after a bit.
suppose it would be. There's one section in the game as well where you're just kind of walking upwards, like, "Oh, this is okay." I mean, there's people just, gyrating, around us, but it's okay.
People just gyrating around.
Yeah, they're boogie.
This is fine. This is okay. Um,
Yeah.
so now that you answered what you
Um,
do in your spiritual practice, how does it look
well,
like in your day-to-day life?
okay, because everything is quite eclectic, thankfully, I have the ability to be kind of creative with things. Um, you don't like, obviously, you don't shed everything, so yeah. Ends were a big change as well. So, I think that's the main thing that actually changed in spirituality. It's just like, "Ooh, here's this new thing that I can chant and actually commune with, through." And that was, like, the one thing that was kind of more fine-tuned. Uh, I also find, like, it's nice to meditate. Usually I do that in the evenings, but sometimes I do it in the mornings because insomnia is great. Um, but, it's a silver lining is actually being able to see the sunrise and just kinda meditating with it. Because I find that it's actually quite uplifting to do that as well, even if you were very, very tired. Um personalized prayer sometimes is something that I do. And comedic practices as well, those didn't exactly leave, obviously, either. So, statues aren't just statues for me. They're it's kinda like animism in a way, but very particular to a spirit where they inhabit the statue. So, the actual statue isn't just a representation, but it is deity and it is spirit. So that's also something which I use. It's kind of like, I suppose, if you draw a sigil on something, it's like, ooh, But just imagine it has energy in it, and you're, yeah, communing with that, I suppose, in a way. Brain working at maybe 15%. Right, sorry. So my words are kind of a bit strange, I suppose. But yeah, meditation is huge. Meditation is the main thing that I do. Invocation, to really try and work with spirit, kind of commune, and work with patron, obviously. There's the Celtic influences as well, so seasons like Halloween. I do still
I'm
celebrate that,
sorry, Halloween is a season.
and as autumn as a season, but Halloween as a celebratory day to honor my ancestors and the dead in general. I like candles on Halloween stuff because it's also like, this helps ancestors maybe find their place in the afterlife if they haven't already. And anyone else kind of like illumination. So I do stuff like that. And then obviously kitchen witchery. It's like when you're trying to call on spirit or invoke them, it's sort of like inviting someone for dinner, in my opinion.
So
It's
you
just like
make
you
them
you
dinner.
prepared the meal. Yeah, but just sharing a meal. Yeah, I think that's cool.
I feel bad. I don't share my meals. I can share my cat, but that's not edible.
It's something simple that I try to incorporate a lot, so it's just something small, but it's going towards spirituality, and I feel happy afterwards.
I tend to be so casual with it because I do have an altar, but I'm not always at it. So sometimes I invoke at the altar and sometimes I invoke at my desk. And then there's like a cat and my offerings and that look at this very cool acorn that I found, in which case I just feel like a caveman that lives like near a wood that just approaches a deity with rock.
No, I mean, like, if you believe, like, in animism and whatnot, there is energy in that too, which is quite nice. I mean, I have a gourd on my altar right now because I do share an altar for King Paimon. But yeah, I gave him a little gourd, so it's nice.
So, are
Mhm.
all statues inhabited by deities that you commune with, or do you have statues of other spirits? For example, the spirit of the statue itself.
Like, I have one primarily for King Paimon, and also, like, artwork as representative of spirit as well. I kind of invite, like, spirit to inhabit that if they wish, and if not, then that's also okay, because invocation is also the alternative to invoke within. Um, but yeah, I kinda do stuff like that as well. 'Cause I think it's just like, "Here's a little house for if you would like. Feel free to come by and, do your thing if you want," but that's just kind of how I work as well. I am very casual. Sometimes I invoke when I'm just out and about too in nature, and it's peaceful. So I just try to share that moment because I think it's special.
How much of an animist are you? As in, do objects in your house have their own personalities or no?
I wouldn't go that deep, but I do recognize energy in, like, my plant, for example, which I've named Lazarus because it's a peace lily. So naturally, when they need water, they flop.
Oh,
So you give them water, and then they rise again. It's like, oh, it's like Lazarus. He's coming back to life.
ah, that's so cute.
So yeah, I named him Lazarus because of that. But I recognize energy that Lazarus has, and maybe like there might be a small amount in like a plastic bottle, but rocks and trees and whatnot, I recognize that they have energy within them. And also in the little houses for spirit.
Because I have a collection of tarot cards, and I swear some of the decks I'm spooking.
Some of them I just don't get on with. There's one that I really like, the Kabbalistic one, the Hermetic Tarot. I love the imagery on it, but we just do not get on well.
There are cards, I mean, I'm sorry, cards. There are decks that I get on with just fine. It's normally the ones that I use all the time, but decks like Spirit Song Tarot, they're so fragile that I swear whenever I use the deck, I scare it and I feel so bad. It feels like using a fluffy bunny to throw some cards.
A fluffy bunny, that's an interesting way to put it.
I'm like, oh no, you little creature. I'm not that scary, I promise. It's gonna
Whenever I
be
pick up a
okay,
card.
deck. And they still work. I mean, the ones that I really don't resonate with, I don't buy at all. It's just, it's Kid's Glove with specific decks of cards, and I'm like, that's also an object, but I
Yeah.
suppose they have their own personality. It's okay. I also
It's
have a little guy guarding my house, which is
mm.
like a little clay thing that I made, and I did ask Lucifer to infuse him, but I think that he's his own thing. That's why I asked if you have any statues that have personalities of their
uh,
own.
well, I have one that I have omitted, um, just because I wanted to, but yeah. Uh, he is a house guardian,
Oh,
as well, but he definitely is his own separate being, compared to King Paimon, for example. The other statues as well, they're different, and this little fellow who helps guard my house is the same as well. He's very, very different, very different.
is he like more of a stern guardian or?
Straight to business. Yeah.
Because I swear some people like entered my energetic space and they just described him very clearly, which kind of
Mm.
means that they directly saw my guardian and not me. But the vessel that I made for that thing, it's so cute that it's very hard for me to imagine it as anything but a very sweet little thing.
Yeah. I suppose if you make it that way, you're going to be more inclined to view them in a more gentle manner. Um, I mean, mine is very rustic, but their energy does not match. I found they do not appear like as I expected them to. I suppose.
I tried
Um,
to make an imposing
hmm.
shadow, and everybody just called it a cat. That's why I described the guardian body as cute.
Oh, that's understandable. Oh, that is cute. Like a little house cat, but if you get too close, he'll scratch you.
And then every single person just goes, there's an imposing silhouette in your space. It kinda looks dark and it has like standing ears, and I will be like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah. Because mine personally is just it is humanoid, but it is also very dark. But does not have any kind of defining traits like horns or anything, just purely humanoid. I think they at one point I thought like at first there were wings, but no, no.
So it's just a guardian guy.
He's just a guy. He's a
Yeah,
cool guy.
he's chilling.
He's chilling, chilling like a villain.
Uh, you did just mention that your altar is shared, so if it is not a secret, who is in your spiritual team right now?
So I do majorly just work with King Paimon, but more and more as of late, I've been working with Duchess Gremory, and she has requested a space as well on the altar, so I am currently making one for her. I am interested in working with other demons, like Duffator. Seems like somebody that I'd work with, and I know not many work with her. Kali with the C rather than Kali with the K from Hindu a Hindu belief. Um, so I'm kind of just drawn to them, and I don't know why. Kali is very similar in many ways to Sigmet, so I think that's why I'm interested in her. But I was going to maybe call like the problem is I've also found that there isn't like an N for her, so I had to commune and channel one from her. That was a new experience, definitely, but I haven't touched Delphator yet. So I expect in the future there might have to be more space on the altar if things work out. But currently it is just Duchess Gremory and King Paimon.
When it comes to, I'm gonna assume, did you pronounce King Paimon your patron, or did you leave it casual?
He he is patron.
Okay.
It was very casual for a long time, but the more and more as I researched, it's just like, you know what? I'd like you to be patron. It's mutual, cool. you
Um,
know, not
did
mutual, but
you, by any chance, channel personal sigils and or path workings for him?
I have made one path working for him. I did include it in a book that I wrote for him. Um, and in terms of sigils, there was one that was communed with me, but I haven't made it like too publicly known or anything. That's just kind of, cool. Here's what it looks like if you want. And that was with Bog magazine, but I didn't mention any names. It's just like it's a chill little sigil. It's personal to me, and it's just like, hey, this is for King Paimon, and it's special. It's fun. It's cool.
I
Yeah.
I don't suppose that he broke it down as in what each line means, or is it obvious if you look at it?
It's kind of a mixture, actually, because I noticed that there was some kind of patterns of Duchess Gremory in it, and I
Ooh.
for whatever reason, um, King Paimon does like to have his little moments where he leaves riddles. And it's just like, "You'll figure it out, you'll figure it out." And I don't like to bother Spirit too much, because it's kinda like knocking on the neighbor's door or asking for sugar, in my opinion sometimes, just for my own personal workings, obviously. I like to try and figure things out. That has been something which has been left to me, and I am working on it, but I think some parts are kinda obvious to me and other parts are not. So a little bit more work to do, but I think I have most of it down.
Which is funny because I channeled a personal sigil to Lucifer. I'm pretty sure I even shared it at one point because, well, I'm allowed to share it.
Hmm.
But I didn't really understand it for, I think, until like last week when he broke it down what I'm looking at. So if I was ever to redraw it, I could redraw it not as sigils, but as like actual objects, because now I know
Mm.
what it's trying to portray. I also ended up accidentally channeling a path working and then never using it because I
Oh,
am very smart.
if you're able to remember it though, like writing it down somewhere would be nice. Even I don't know if you're into kind of like making it publicly known, but it would be useful for others maybe to connect through it too.
It's so similar to what I use because I use a path working that ends in a black scorched tree that is sprouting silver from its green buds. And one day I
Mm.
was just sitting there and thinking of a beautiful field of flowers that were silver with it was like silver stems and black tops. And suddenly I just felt Lucifer there, and I was like, "Oh, hello."
That's really beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm very visual. I use visualization a lot, so I don't want to accidentally picture it or anything, just in case, and I have to say hi, Lucifer. Um,
Oh, hello. I'm here
um,
now. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to call you.
yeah, it's a little bit of a mix up. Sorry. Um, because it's kind of funny. The things that do arrive in meditations too.
um,
Yeah.
I do know that in your book for Paimon, you compared Paimon to a lot of different spirits. Um,
Ooh,
one of
yeah.
which was an angel, I think.
Real. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think
They're
that they're one and the same?
I don't actually know. The way I view things, I think that because like across the world things can be so similar. Like, the like Kali Sigmats, they have very, overlapping features. And I think that maybe things may be seen in other entities, or they're just kind of so similar they might as well just be equated with one another. So while I don't know, and I don't think so, but the similarities are very much there. And I'm just curious then if, because, you have all these deities, entities just in general to kind of collect them into one thing, one descriptive. It's just like, what if it's just a different name for the same entity? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure yet.
I'm asking because you are the only person, I think, that has ever put that in writing. And I have some spicy UPG that Lucifer and Michael might be one and the same. And I'm pretty
Really?
sure that if I ever disclosed it, like, definitely Christians would be angry, but I'm pretty sure that demonolatry side would be too.
Honestly, I don't care. It's just this is what comes to me, and whether or not you're angry, like I'm sorry you feel that way, but this is just how spirit has presented itself to me, and I hope that people would at least consider it. That angels could, like, because even in demonology, a lot of the time it's like they're described as fallen angels. So the angelic form is there. What if it's just like, hey, different cultures, similar entities, maybe there's something there. Because I do view things like that in general. That perhaps there is just entities under the same name. It makes sense that there is the possibility of the just entity is maybe angel, perhaps maybe not. At least the idea has been put forth for people to consider.
I view it really weirdly, where I view the expression of the spirit that we have here, aka the thing that has the name and the likes and the dislikes, as more of a mask, and the spiritual force behind it is something that can just pick and choose what they wear. I am pretty sure that some faces are shared between multiple different spirits, perhaps, and some faces are just like theirs. So, for example, I'm pretty sure that Lucifer's Lucifer's, but I also think that he overlaps with Shiva, but only in specific points.
That's interesting because there were certain aspects of entities linked to Shiva that were also similar with King Paimon. I wasn't sure enough, so I just omitted it. Um, and forgive me because of migraine, but I do know what you mean, and I do like that theory a lot because it makes sense.
I love
Because, you know,
reading your
you have
books.
Thank you. And I love reading yours too, by the way.
It just lets us share, which is so nice.
Yeah. It's like one stream, you know how people would describe it as a stream of consciousness, and then there's just branches. So literally
Yeah.
like a tree, but a spirit tree. And on those spirit tree branches, there are different faces and different shades or masks or different presentations of spirit. So you might have it's like aspects, maybe as in, you know, like you've got the kinder aspect of Hathor, for example, in ancient Egyptian mythology where you have Hathor who is transforms into the vengeful Sekhmet, that the Lord Ra pushes forth because he wants revenge on people turning their backs on him. But after seeing the savagery, like of the all the bloodshed from his doing, he suddenly becomes upset. It's like, you know what, I don't like this, etc., etc. That's the story. Eventually, Sekhmet is calmed or bloodthirst is quelled. But that anger aspect, and then transforming back into the loving, more gentle, motherly Heather, I completely do see that. And for the longest time, I was kind of hard polytheist, and I saw entities as their own distinct self. But the more and more I focused on it, it's like, no, that can't, like, it's possible, but I do like soft polytheism too, because that also makes sense. Because if it's coming from one stream of consciousness, eventually you got to get those branches too.
I am kind of just imagining trees holding hands right now. It's very cute.
Well, it is a nice imagery.
Considering your background in Wicca and kitchen practices, and honestly, it's not that Egyptian gods are very soft either. They're portrayed as pretty scary, so it's not that big of a jump. But was it hard to incorporate connecting with a demon in your practice? Was it scary? How did the first experience go?
Um, it wasn't that difficult to incorporate a demon into practices, thankfully. Obviously there were some adjustments like, hey, demons seem pretty chill, but I've never worked with one. Let's give it a go. I got very lucky. I think it was on my second attempt at communication that he came. King Paimon arrived, and it's just we had our chat. It was chill. I like to ask demons how they are and stuff, and just get to know them that way. Like you would try to make a friend, I suppose, in real life. So it was very nice actually, and much different than what I expected from grimoires and whatnot. And of course, I didn't expect it to be exactly like what the grimoires say. I wasn't expecting anything awful or very imposing. But I guess I was trying to approach from a like. I guess the best way is like you go back to thinking back to school and you're trying to approach a teacher, and obviously you're not bowing or anything. You're just casually approaching, but with respect. And as a result, communication was very, very easy and very simple once it was established. But I have seen some other people with their own unverified personal gnosis or UPG where they had difficulties, and I completely understand it because sometimes the energy feels very mute. And that's when obviously sometimes energy doesn't feel as strong during the year as other times of the year. But overall, it was very much a pleasant experience, and I didn't experience any kind of hardships.
It's because I swear I came into this like I'm fish brained. Um, it didn't occur to me to even like be scared of spirits. And I see so many
Mm.
people coming from like a Christian background and
Oh,
they
yeah.
carry like really severe fear.
Yeah, it's very understandable, honestly. Especially when you're just taught, like, oh, after you die, if you don't believe in Yahweh, you're going to go to hell. Do you know what hell is like?
Hell
You
is
don't
a
want to know.
bad place, and that is where demons decide and reside. And they're bad people. They're very bad people. Get yourself a
Yeah,
silver ring to protect from its poison breath. I don't know how that works, but hello, old grimoires.
they're wonderful, aren't they? At least they introduce us to new ideas and concepts and entities, I suppose. So, silver lining in that.
I mean, at least it keeps the names going. As much
Exactly.
as much as I'm angry that Lucifer's name got dragged into the Bible, I honestly feel like it was on purpose. Like, imagine how relevant it made him during the Christian years.
I'm sorry. I'm just imagining someone else as Lucifer and says, "You know what? You're irrelevant. You're Lucifer now." Uh, yeah, it does feel terrible though. Like, there was some fear at first, but it's just like, you know what? It's most likely just gonna be no different than communing with ancient Egyptian entities or Celtic entities. Like I had a little bit of fear when, like, the Morrigan from Celtic mythology, or just systems, was involved, but over time, it's just like, "You know what? This is fine. It's fine." And then I brought that over to demonology, and thankfully, it was true, for me personally, that they were not scary, and in fact, there are many, many gentle demons, very kind of, it feels nice, it feels warm, it feels welcoming, and it doesn't feel like, "Get it g what are you pestering me for? F off." It didn't feel like that, which was very nice.
um, uh, just a little question. What does the energy of Paimon feel like to you?
I know it differs from person to person, but for me, it feels very airy and with earth. And
It's
sometimes it might be watery, but I never feel like it's over. Like it's mainly very, very airy. Sometimes I feel it feels like you're being lifted up into the air.
It's so weird because for me, he feels like a tornado. Like
Wow.
I can't exactly describe his energy as being too pleasant. It's not too unpleasant, but it's like having a dizzy field come into your house.
Mm. Like during certain meditations, I would feel that kind of dizzy aspect. That it isn't like what you're experience like you would experience. So it would only be the slightest. For the most part, it just feels very nice. Well,
I'm wondering if you're
it's
just really well aligned with him.
uh, I would like to hope so, because I don't experience like being on a teacup ride or something just spinning. Um, I'm very happy for that. So I get along well with him. King Paimon seems to be chill with me, which I'm very glad for once again. But yeah, I haven't experienced anything like what you have.
I'm just
That's
imagining like invoking your patron and every single time just feeling like you're on a teacup ride. Why did you come here? We.
uh,
Then for a
yeah.
while, like Lucifer felt ice cold to me, like very, very cold as an energy to interact with. Now he just kind of feels like a wind is touching me, which is a lot nicer.
That sounds nice. In a lot of meditations, Lucifer, like with King Paimon, Lucifer has made a few appearances. But he always felt kind of more like enwrapping or something, kind of just wrapping around me and kind of pulling me toward a center point of gravity. Like, there's an equilibrium, and I'm not there yet. That's what it feels like when like Lucifer is present, but not too strong, but just a little bit.
I just feel like you described like a claw, but then wrapped it in a blanket.
It's like a blanket, yes, and it's just pulling me in like, "Hi, the bed is here. You want or the chair is here. You wanna sit down?" You know? It's very inviting. It doesn't feel malevolent at all in any aspect, but it's just like, you're almost at the destination, but here's a little pull toward it.
It's weird because for me he can actually feel benevolent and malevolent at the same time. Um,
I
I
thankfully haven't felt that.
I think it's the all sides of the coin at once thing,
Mm.
where you can get every perspective on a situation at the same time. And I did also experience him coming with King Paimon sometimes. And
Ooh.
when I was having spiritual issues, King Paimon almost did an outreach that made me laugh because effectively was like, "Hey, I can be your girlfriend." I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Come share, you know, if you have difficulties, just like share, I'm here." And I was like, that's so weird because now I'm imagining a pajama party, like you're just approached by this big deity and he's like, "I'll be in your pajama party." Come on.
Uh, in my experiences, whenever Lucifer is there, King Paimon feels like the host of everything. Like, it definitely feels like Lucifer then takes center stage, but King Paimon makes it very, very clear that he is also there. But he's like very kind, accommodating. But hi, here's Lucifer. I'd like you to meet him. I'm glad that you were speaking. It was something like that at the very first time, and it didn't really change.
Like,
Yeah.
whenever I meet other spirits, I have a feeling that once you like aligned with a patron, you always kind of approach it from their territory. So they will be around like regardless. So
Mm.
even in invocations when you can't particularly feel them. When I was invoking all of the spirits of Goetia and Ducante hierarchy, there were certain points where normally Lucifer would like stand at the back, but with certain entities, he was like front and center stage. Like he was in front of me, creating almost like a wall between the energies. So that was quite the experience.
Oh, like he was protecting you from some
Yeah.
of the energy. Wow. Kinda like preventing too much of an influence, maybe.
Specifically
That's
with
interesting.
Asmodeus, which was really weird.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure why actually, but that is actually like genuinely
I
interesting.
think it's because Asmodeus's energy is very loving and inviting, and
Ooh, very alluring, huh?
yeah,
He's afraid to lose you.
like no, this one already has a patron. Move along.
That's nice. You got, a very nice and caring guardian as well.
I don't suppose you have experienced that.
I was like when I was first kind of curious about getting in touch with other entities, King Paimon was like, "Yeah, well, you should contact Remory. Like, you will both get along, I think." So I did, and yeah. So,
Were
um,
you ever told that like specific entities are a no or like everything's allowed?
um, like that one is kind of strange. So it felt like I wasn't allowed to contact male entities, but the women were fine. Which is the strangest thing. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around, like, "Really? I don't know."
You can't call any men. Women are fine.
He prefers that I don't call men, but he made that clear, prefer. But women are fine.
Um,
I don't know, I had a very strange encounter with, Baal, uh, 'cause
Ball.
I fell asleep watching a video about him because I was just researching, and it's just like, "Oh, cool," and then I just sort of fell asleep. And I had a dream about a black cat that night, and it felt excuse me, sorry. It felt very strange, and then I just saw a gentleman come from this void, this darkness, and just introduce themselves as well. And King Paimon was not very happy. He was not happy about that. Because like, at first, it's just like, "Oh, yeah, Belle wants to, use you, so just be careful. I want only my influence." That's what it felt like. Um, and as I communicated, it's just like, "Hey, I don't want you really contacting men, that is my preference, but, if you really want to, go ahead." But with that night, that was, very, very different because he did not seem pleased at all, because
Oh,
he wasn't. It was fine, but yeah, it was definitely a different side to King Paimon.
I don't suppose he was angry at you because I mean you can't influence your dreams.
Exactly, and obviously that was recognized, which and that's why I said, "I would prefer if you didn't contact them."
There were a couple of spirits that I met in dreams that I don't really work with them, but it was kind of like, oh hello, sort of thing. Um,
Mm,
I walked past Hecate once, which was really weird because it felt like I was viewing an impossible face. Like, you know how she's normally portrayed with like three faces. Um,
yeah.
Try to overlay that, but like multiple times over. So you have this weird geometric shape with practically a face in every direction. So I was like, wow, that looks interesting. And I also met Anubis, and Anubis just seemed really chill.
Yeah, his energy is very calming, I think, and
Yeah,
I suppose it suits, the function his function, to put it that way. Um, with the afterlife and stuff, you kinda want to be at peace. You kinda want to feel, calm. I think it suits him.
it was just at a point where I was having faith based troubles, and that was just effectively like, oh, don't worry, if you really had nowhere to go in your afterlife, you can always call on me, like, I'm just a friend. So I was like, wow, I did not expect a chthonic god because normally they're supposed to be scary to be so, I don't know, just chill.
Yeah. It's, definitely contradictory in a way, as you stated, that they're meant to be kinda scary. Some of the chthonic entities I find they're more calm than I expected, but also some of them are very, very heavy. Like, the energy just feels like it is crushing you.
Oof.
Yeah.
I did not meet all of them, so I wouldn't know.
Well, I haven't met all of them yet, but yeah.
Normally, it's the earth aspect of things that give me that feeling because I mean, I'm a Taurus already. So if
Mm,
I contact a very earth heavy spirit, it can just feel like a big boulder descending upon you.
yeah. Uh, I don't know, I never really, I suppose, looked too much into astrology because I looked and it's just like, I'm not sure if it's for me yet. I do intend to get into it at some point.
It's funny because I
Um,
read a whole giant book on it, decided that it's not for me, and I keep on circling back to it.
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Everything just kind of comes back to it now. It's just like, I probably have to learn this soon.
I don't like this. I don't want to believe in planets.
I like the idea, but it's also just it's complicated in its own way, and I don't know. It's just a little intimidating.
I
That's all.
I have like a feeling that I read what computers like say about your chart and I go nothing applies to me, but then if I analyze it myself by hand I go, oh, if you take a different interpretation I understand.
Yeah, I found that as well. Most of it was just like, this doesn't align at all. And then after a little more kind of delving, it still didn't match, on if I'm honest, in many areas, but in the rest it did. Yeah.
It is also kind of funny how I do have a horoscope that's just mailed to me constantly. I don't know why. I don't know how to
Hmm.
unsubscribe to it. So it's okay. But It's just
Pretty
it
intense.
it says things in such a vague way that I'm like, it sounds like you're trying to interpret the tarot card from multiple people because that is kind of what they do. Because they go,
Yeah.
oh, you will experience a difficulty in this area of life, or this one, or this one, or this one, and you will be definitely changing how you do something, like in this area, or perhaps this one. I'm like, hello, vague.
I remember years ago, speaking with someone about this, and they were just like, "Well, did you ever just let it come true?" And it's just like at that point, then what? No. Then it's just like forcing something to happen that's not going to happen. So I think there is a different approach in there, but it's just I haven't found it yet.
It's also hard to force it. Like, how
Mm.
do you have difficulty in an area on purpose?
Yeah. And when something is so vague, because it's usually, well, when I used to rate them anyway, it's just like you may have some issues surrounding home life or economic issues, but your friendships will blossom, and it's just like, okay, thanks. I don't know if that. It's just like, oh, it's like the weather. It changes every 20 minutes. Dang it. That's how I view planets, though. It's constantly changing their influences. It's like, the moon and the water. Everyone knows that the moon influences the tides and whatnot. So it's just something I think there's something there, but just I need to get into it more so.
You don't know. Maybe I'm a flat earther.
We are on the celestial turtle.
Yes. Whereas a celestial turtle supported by four elephants.
Exactly.
You already mentioned that you're a soft polytheist, but is there any spirit that you specifically merge with Paimon? Like, not just a could be, would be, but absolutely is.
Honestly, I'm not sure yet because I'm still actually researching, particularly in the Bedouins at the moment. And from the Bedouins, there's entities like Sha'at, Ashar, and Abgal. For some reason, I'm really drawn to them and I want to research them because there's imagery that is. I'm wondering if it's kind of like an Azizos kind of deal, where maybe, one's the Cameleer and the other is the Horseman. Because in the Bedouins, there's, naturally they had clans, but it's where, the Islamic origin, or not Islamic, but Arabic kind of origins. They were nomadic people, and obviously tribal. They'll have different entities and deities. And I'm just researching that area because obviously they would trade camels, they would ride camels, and very rarely eat camels if they needed to. And they went into various areas like Mesopotamia, the Levant, but I think they originated around the Saracen area, like North Egypt. And I'm wondering if there's something relating to King Paimon in that area. Because I also noticed as well the name or the word Panem. And I think that was in Sloan 3825, 3824, 3825. And that's from the from the British Library. It translated into a derogative term for pagans.
Oof.
But it's another name for King Paimon, but it referred originally to pagans that were maybe non-Christian, non-Judaic in belief. And in I think around the 1400s, and it changed into a collective term then for all pagans who were, non-Judaic, yourself. And I'm wondering if there's some similarity because obviously you have Belial, who is regularly associated with King Paimon and sometimes listed as one of the kings that are with him, alongside Balam. But there's also a different word, Basan, and I'm wondering if over time Basan evolved into Balam as well. So while they are associating entities, Belial in particular is very interesting because, when you take the compounded word and it might mean the worthlessness or, an entity, that a group had worshipped, and it was turned into this kind of offensive term maybe to them at the time. And I'm wondering if Panem might be, Paimon, but as a term for pagans, simultaneously an entity maybe of nomadic origin, maybe with the Bedouins or maybe not. That is simultaneously, is that a demon, but also a word describing that group, similar to Belial. I don't know if there's any truth to it, but it's just a theory.
Also, you know how King Paimon has a dromedary, well, camel,
Mm.
and uh, a lady on top of a camel?
Yeah.
In your opinion, is he the camel, the lady, or both?
You see, the energy does feel like it overlaps, but there is still a personality to his dromedary. The UPG, his name came through as Bilias's, so I just refer to his King Paimon's dromedary as such. The energy does feel very similar to King Paimon's, but not entirely. So I think there's a mixture of both and somebody else there.
Oh, that's kind of sweet. Like he made himself a camel. But
Maybe.
he's not the
Or
camel, but he made the camel.
maybe, but it feels I don't know, like, maybe he's just bringing a friend, but the influence is kind of so strong on Bilias's that it's just, like, overwhelming to a point, but it's just like, "This is fine, I agree with this kind of, force, and it's cool."
Well,
I'm wondering.
obviously, we're
Mm,
sharing a cover artist at the moment, and she's
mhm.
also Paimon devotee. I'm just interested. Have you ever tried to censor energy and a really out there idea? Compare it to the camel, because that might help to determine whether it is a spirit who's just under the influence of King Paimon.
Like, it does feel like Biliasis is under the influence of King Paimon to such an extent, but there's always just that lingering curiosity of a what if. That's mainly the issue, I suppose, in a way. Um,
Because if
and
I
censoring
like
energy,
read
yeah.
King Paimon followers, they all have like this lingering energy of King Paimon in a way.
Yeah, like, there's that overlap as well. Like, I have yet to meet someone who isn't devoted or just working with King Paimon, who isn't an artist to some degree, or at least interested in science as a field. Um, because most people are artists, they either paint, they draw, they build, like, like crafting, or make music. So, there's at least a shared energy, I suppose, amongst people who are artists, at least.
Um, I have met a very weird amount of Luciferian authors that are also recluses.
Yeah, it is kinda like that as well, to a degree with King Paimon, excuse me, where it's just like, there is that lingering energy as well, where it's just like, you feel comfortable being alone and spending time alone just with your own company. Because 'cause I'm like that as well. I like being by myself, it's fine, I will read my book outside in a park or in a cafe, and it's peaceful, and I'm comfortable like that. And that's kind of why I was also drawn to the Bedouins, who were also tribes who were nomadic and pastoral. So they would just go wherever there was, food for themselves and for their animals.
On that note, do you think King Paimon is like really, really social or the opposite of that?
It's kind of a mixture for me personally. Also, just to clarify, I don't mean like every tribe that is just kind of, pastoral or by themselves is related to King Paimon. I'm just interested in that area for some reason. I'm just drawn to it. Um, his energy, I don't, sometimes it's very loud and sometimes it's just quite calming and peaceful. And other times it's just like slightly muted, I suppose, but just like a calming wind as well. There's usually a calming wind for me.
Because if I had to place the social one between Paimon and Lucifer, I would say that King Paimon is the more people facing spirit. As
Mm.
it's weird with Lucifer. He has such a like big name and he obviously has quite a lot of followers, but there's even like records that he's like really hard to evoke on all the spirits and he can feel like distant, and I'm like, he is selecting all the recluses for himself, which just kind of makes me think that maybe he's an introverted spirit in comparison.
Whenever I saw him when like with King Paimon or even alone, he did feel very, very much comfortable with his own company. I'll put it that way. Um, King Paimon can be louder, as I said. It's like a mixture. Sometimes he's kind of more muted, and other times it's just like, "Hi, here, I'm the party." So
It is funny
that is interesting. Yeah.
because the next question is, could you share any UPG about King Paimon that you haven't shared in your book, but you kind of been doing this the whole interview? Like, is there more?
um, like some I don't mention, obviously, because they're very personal to me. Um, there was a strange one though. I don't think I mentioned it. There was mentioning in the book though where he had appeared like as a boar, like with a boar head. But I'm wondering if that's just comedic influences kind of bleeding into practices again, where you had even Bast who had head of a cat but body that was humanoid. But there was one meditation in particular that confused me. So in UPG, I experienced King Paimon with the head of a black ram with very exaggerated horns,
Oh.
which absolutely confused me because even the energy changed a little bit where it felt darker and the environment changed to be a little bit darker, but it was slightly imposing, but thankfully not by much. And I know that some people equate or believe King Paimon is Azazel, but just UPG, I don't believe that. The energy is very, very different to me. But it's still a riddle that I've yet to kind of unravel.
The weirdest appearances of Lucifer for me were one as a minotaur, and second thing was like a jackal-headed entity, kind of close to Anubis, but also really shriveled. So that
Oh,
is a really weird description to give.
no, I wonder if it's Whipwit.
Wet boy?
Uh,
What?
yeah, Whipwit. It's another jackal entity,
Oh,
but less well known. We think some statues maybe Whipwit. It's a very unusual spelling. There's lots of W's. But we don't know if it's representative of Anubis or Whipwit because their functions, I believe, are quite similar uh, to a degree anyway. The rest, I can't remember them, but they were a little different. So I'm wondering if it's maybe that Whipwit. And again, I
hmm.
may not be pronouncing it correctly because it's just, yeah, hieroglyphs are hard.
It's okay. I have never even heard of that name, and uh, trust a person with a complicated last name to know how to pronounce complicated words.
Don't ask me to pronounce simple words, I won't be able to do it.
Okay. Let's say that someone hears this interview, right? And then they go, well, King Paimon's is on all right guy. I really want to contact him. But they like had no dabbling in the occult or anything on the weirder side whatsoever. What skills do you think they should like pick up before they even try an invocation?
Honestly, it's you would be maybe looking well, they will be looking at just kind of general practices, like basic stuff, maybe like bring aboard meditation and really going at that for a while until you're able to comfortably enter a calm state. because I believe being able to be calm is important because trances are quite important to me in my own practices, and because it helps in communing with the divine. And I guess it also depends on the person as well. Again, that was brought up earlier, like if they believe there may be danger in calling demons, like trying to do our best to remove any lingering issues with past experiences of religion, for example. I think that's really important as well. Um, I know that can be really hard because I was very lucky not to be brought up in a household that were very dogmatic or anything. So there's a lot of people who are not that fortunate.
Yeah.
It's kind of an issue then with deprogramming in that area, for lack of a better term.
Uh,
Um,
do you think that if you perceive a spirit as being scary and evil, they would come through as scary as evil?
I mean, I think there's a possibility because there's also the factor of the human mind, and what we may put onto an entity as they're coming through. I really think that that is a possibility, that it could wind up that the entity coming is going to be appearing kind of spooky or scary.
Yeah, I
Um,
would say I agree with that. Like, if you're prepared to spook yourself as well, even if the spiritual interaction isn't that spooky, you might interpret it as very spooky.
yeah, exactly. Like after watching a horror movie at night, and then all of a sudden you might be a little bit jumpy going into a dark room, for example.
So, what
Th-
you're saying is that a person should definitely watch Hereditary first and then try.
yeah. Uh, um, I Okay, personal opinion, that was not a good movie. Not for the issues with King Paimon necessarily, just I don't think it's a good movie in general. But aside from that, I think that media also influences, you know, your perception obviously of demons because in Hereditary, as you mentioned, King Paimon is presented more as like a Lokian figure or something like a trickster demon. Whereas no, no, I would not say that is the case. From personal experiences, writings, documentation, you know, grimoires, and then also like stuff like Has Been Hotel, where King Paimon is allegedly the father of Stolas, and it's like no, no, I would not say that.
Oh,
Um, I think that's also a thing like deprogramming or uh, disassociating from those images or depictions. That's also important.
would you say that media presence of demons is a good thing or a bad thing?
Overall, I would say it's a good thing, because it can make people aware of new names that they may not know of. Some people thankfully do research, entity names that pop up and just like, oh, that's interesting. Whereas you might find other people then, which I have seen myself, where they think they're going to talk with a woman who's going to give you all your desires, all the best sex life, you're going to have that, and I think it can be very harmful in that aspect. But uh at least there are a lot of people who come forward and start asking questions, which I'm very thankful for as well, because then it's just like, hi, this is that, and no, don't worry about that at all. That's just media. That is Hollywood, because Hollywood's gonna be Hollywood.
Ignore if this
Mm.
link doesn't come through. Fine. Um, yes, it did. Because that is, this is a new phone game that people found like a couple of days ago. Um,
I think I know this one. I think I got a link to this as
yeah,
well that just came out.
every single demon is a husband or a waifu, and Paimon's a waifu.
Well, the artwork is very cute, but it does very much produce that, like, even Solomon, yeah.
The husband,
Well,
King Solomon.
yeah. But, yeah. I think overall media is fine because you're just gonna be like, "Ooh, I wonder who Citri is gonna be like." Uh, but I mean, with King Paimon anyway, sometimes, very effeminate. He can come through very effeminate, sometimes like a woman as well, and other times more masculine. There was times when King Paimon even had a beard. Spirit can take any form that they desire, but overall, media representation, I think, is it's iffy.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're very bad, but people will gain awareness of their name at least, which I think is useful in the long term because then people who actually want to research them will find out a lot of information.
Yeah, because I did hear one person say that if they had gotten a nickel every single time when Paimon is portrayed as a blonde anime girl, they would have two nickels, which isn't that much, but it's weird that it happened twice.
If you were to ask me, I would have many more nickels, but okay. Yeah, it's very common, I've noticed, it's very common for King Paimon to be portrayed as a woman or like a waifu.
Aw, waifu.
Yeah.
So let's say that the person knows how to meditate and they're very much not scared, and hopefully they're not imagining Paimon as a blonde waifu. Um, what would be the best way for them approach King Paimon for like the first time, and should there be anything that they should be wary of?
I think it kinda goes back, to what I mentioned before, kind of like thinking that you're back in school but approaching a teacher. You would approach them, like, as if, maybe not equals, but just someone to learn from. You're not exactly on par with each other, but, it's fine. You're not bowing down or anything. You're not lesser. You would view yourself as an equal coming forward to King Paimon, at least in my opinion, and introduce yourself. My name is Anne, and I would like to get to know you more. Would you be fine with that? Because I think like a lot of people who do come into it as well, they mention I bow down to Satan, and he master. And I don't really agree with that because I think that we're more on terms with one another than to need to bow to them. I would not approach King Paimon like that at all. I don't agree with that. I would approach King Paimon as if, just casual, but as like a teacher, and approaching him with respect is a big one. Because I mean, if you're gonna approach anyone, you kind of just want to show that kind of where you show respect, it will be received as well. That's how I've experienced it.
Talking about
And
respect, have you ever tried to drop his title from his name, and would you recommend such a practice or no?
I haven't personally, but I've been given permission to just say, just call me by Paimon, uh, which is very kind of him. But it's kind of a work in progress because I keep saying King Paimon anyway. And I think unless you're given permission, just address King Paimon as King Paimon because that is a title that has been earned, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it's
And
very,
yeah,
very weird. And the fact that when I was interacting with King Paimon and the few interactions that I did have with him, I very stupidly never used this title. And like the spirit was like completely fine with that. And then I read people saying on the internet that he does get offended if you don't use your title. So I wonder if that just varies person to person.
I think it might vary person to person. Like personally, I just address him as King Paimon, so I didn't really have that issue. But I believe, UPG, somebody probably is going to experience that. Because it's, anything's possible.
And now you're King Paimon devotee for how long, by the way?
God, it's been about a year now, or longer than a year. The time is flying by. I can't actually count, but it's been at least a year, more than a year.
have you noticed changes in your life after like you started working with the spirit and has been have been working with the spirit? Like changes in your personality, changes to things that you like how has it influenced you?
He had definitely King Paimon has definitely influenced my life, and in ways that were really surprising. One of the biggest ones was not really liking alcohol as much.
Ooh.
Um, so I just stopped drinking, and I now only drink in, like, kinda social gatherings, or if it's given to me as a gift. Because otherwise I don't really like drinking anymore, whereas I used to. But King Paimon figured that it was best for me to not, indulge in that. So it might be okay with a meal, like a glass of wine with a meal, but not overindulging so much. And I it was so sudden, that change, that I cannot attribute the change to anything other than divine interference. Um, he's also changed my mind largely on color. I used to hate the color pink,
Aw.
and yet it was like my mind did a 180 one day, and all of a sudden I like all the pretty things. Um, I have a deeper appreciation for perfumes and for flowers, actually. Um, I never really used to wear perfumes, I did not care, and now it's just like, "Ooh, that smells nice." And again, that was such a sudden shift, uh, that I cannot attribute it to anything else than King Paimon. And one other thing, I suppose, is a slight increase in confidence despite common self deprecation humor. Hasn't been as quick as others, but it's creeping in there in a way that it doesn't necessarily feel like it's just me. So there's definitely a decent amount of influence on my life, both as like a push to do so, to make those changes, but also in a here, let me help you out in a different way form of influence, to put it that way.
um Oh wow, brain, come on. We can do sentences.
Okay.
Amazing. Sorry, I got a message and it distracted me so bad that I lost the ability to think. I don't know how that happened.
Are you okay?
Yes. Like my brain just pulled an error just now. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Um, it's funny because after starting working with Lucifer, I swear I'm some sort of Victorian novel lady that will answer weird amount of questions with, "Oh, I can't, my nerves."
Oh, that's nice. Um,
I suppose I was made to be very, very careful with what I watch, what I play, what kind of music I listen, and the idea is that it should be inspiring, educational, or fun. And if it's instead frustrating, angering, or stressful, it's a big no. I also really
yes.
appreciate like life more and nature. I took up photography after like starting working with spirits, and I think it's kind of important for people to know that if you take like spirit work seriously and you take a spirit as deeply as your patron, there will be outright personality changes to you.
Yeah, I fully agree because I have also experienced it. Um, it's funny that you mentioned that, like, appreciating nature more, because, like, I've always appreciated nature, at least ever since I was young and kind of get it, like, I was into Wicca. But you definitely do feel that appreciation more so. I think if you, at least personally getting into demonology, there was that slight shift towards, like, this is very divine and you should appreciate it.
I'm now that person that goes to the forest and forages the floor, which is a
Yeah.
very weird
Yeah.
thing to do. Like, if someone was to observe me, I'm just there picking up a stick going, "Ooh, what a nice moss pattern."
I've noticed actually I don't care as much what people think. I would do something like that, and if people stare, just like, "Eh, so what?"
I-
Whereas I used to feel a lot more self-conscious.
I'm trying. Like, I was told that my next lesson in life is to actually gain self confidence because, as you said, like self deprecation is completely a no no. But I
Mhm.
really struggle with it because I found that I have constructed a lot of myself through life based on what I think other people will be proud of when they look at me. Like, there was that feeling of, I really want to make these people proud. And that influence was deemed to be very toxic and has been completely discontinued this year. And it's also my Saturn return as a, as an astrological thing. So that's a very weird coinkydink. But
Huh.
uh, it's being able to stand your own and not give a shit with the kind of things that other people say to you, because I also had quite an increase in very angry people messaging me just because they're angry.
Oh, you gotta love the internet.
Uh,
Oh god.
I'm just
I've noticed
I'm
there's just been a shift in people. People have just become way more angry than they used to. I don't know what's going
I'm
on.
getting death threats at least several times a week now.
What?
And it's not coming from
Uh,
Christians, by the way.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. I have other people that work with demons that outright send me death threats. Either because I moderate communities and they lost their account and maybe they got butthurt, or just because they very much dislike me. So I get messages like, I'll sacrifice you and your family to Moloch and things like that. And you can write a lot of this off as like trolling, but it's very concerning.
Yeah, that is genuinely very concerning. I do hope that it's just people just genuine just being angry and they don't act upon it. For the most part, people don't,
I
uh,
even like
from what I've seen, but
I even contacted the police about it, and they were like, "Well, these
yeah,
people are out of country. We can't really do anything about them."
that's the issue. Yeah, uh, I would definitely hope that they don't act on it, but just so long as it's just like, they don't know where you are, lesson A, never tell people where you live. I mean,
It's like
that's kind of common knowledge,
it
but yeah.
also didn't help that Etsy doxed my city, which I'm very angry.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
what?
you know how when you sell on Etsy, they go, "This seller is near you. They're
Yeah.
in X city." Like, you can't select for them to not show that. So I had like people send me messages of going, "I know what city you're living in. I'm buying a plane ticket." And my husband was like, "First of all, this is a very big city. Secondly, even if they
Yeah.
found our address, it would be my husband opening the door. And thirdly,
Yeah.
they wouldn't even like know my real name. They would be referring to me as either my author name or my username, which would just be red flags galore. Like, why are you here? I'm looking for this username." Ah, so you're one of the people that were
Yeah.
doing the threatenings then.
That is ridiculous. I didn't even know Etsy did that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I wasn't too
What?
happy to find that out either.
I I'm sorry. I just don't. Well, today I learned Etsy is awful. Okay. Like, Etsy is way worse than I thought. Okay. Um, I mean, it's a lot. Yeah, your husband's gonna be opening the door, so there is, that.
Yeah, so I kind of
Um,
feel pretty safe, but also just what the fuck? And uh,
I'm very taken aback by that,
I
honestly.
have
Like, all of
I
it.
have a feeling that if you're an author now, and if you just make a couple of spicy takes somewhere, You might receive the same treatment.
Yeah, that's okay. um,
I
I
know that you were
I
already
don't know.
like dealing with internet problems.
Yeah, so I'm just more careful with what I do, and I if one alias is kinda, like, compromised, I change it, and I just stop using the previous one, or just I do things that kinda just try to, you know, throw people off, but if you want any tips, I guess, feel free to hit me up,
uh,
because I've dealt with some issues before.
because I also know that the lady that's in charge for like Library of Lilith, uh, she also is kind of prepared to do that. Like she makes throwaway accounts, and if they draw too much attention, she just like burns the account and moves and makes a new one. But like I have an author alias, man. I don't just want to burn it. The same way that I have like I don't know how many years of a YouTube channel. I don't just want to set it on fire and move on. That's not very nice. So I was like, I suppose I'm just dealing with this now. Just block and erase any weird emails that I get.
Yeah, that's understandable. I had a fairly large, a couple of accounts in the past. I just burned them. And anybody who I trusted, then I got in contact with them, and she's like, "Yo, this is the new alias. Nice to reestablish contact, etc." But other than that, yeah, I just burn them.
I suppose that explains why I have so many names.
Yep.
Here's the thing, like your author alias and where you're posting your books on itch.io doesn't quite match. Is it okay if those two things are linked, or would you rather I didn't put the link to your itch.io in this video?
No, that's okay, because it is linked to pretty much yeah, they're both pretty much linked, so it's okay.
Um, Going back before we started having a very disturbing conversation, um,
Okay.
is there any traits that you see that all Paimon devotees pretty much share?
That honestly, it's gonna be the most cliche answer, and that is the arts. As said, I have yet to meet any King Paimon devotee who isn't involved in it in some way, whether it's photography, painting, like, building birdhouses, um, just making music in some way. There's such an overlap with that, and also with the sciences, like with logic, mathematics, stuff like that. I've found there's quite an overlap with that and the his devotees.
Well, because he's in charge of sciences and arts. Have you seen any person that's just like a science person under Paimon with no art whatsoever?
Like, not as often. I've only seen one, I think, um, and that was so long ago. All the rest have just been painters, artists. They've been, doing crochet, that kind of stuff.
That
That's the biggest thing.
that
Yeah.
person must really feel like the odd one out.
uh, I never asked them, but yeah, I'd imagine.
So you wrote several books. You wrote one on Sekhmet. You wrote one on Paimon. Are you planning to write any more?
I was hoping to plan a book. It would likely be a very dry read and about the history of magical ingredients, herbs, perfumery, in European
I
regions.
don't want to read that, man.
I, I, thank you. I wasn't sure about it as well, but maybe like stuff on kitchen witchery again. But trying to involve demonology just like, I think it would be very simple, but for anybody who wouldn't be sure about it, like, it would just be there if you wanted to check it out, something like that. And the other one was probably, demons in Kemetic beliefs, like, how ancient Egyptians saw demons is kinda different to ours. One example I can think of immediately is Sekhmet's infamous demon gangs.
Ooh.
Demons who were under her control and at her command. Issued forth carried by winds to spread plague. And those who were deserving of it usually get it, and it's incurable. At least that's what was documented. And there's also lesser entities as well who were also considered demons, but there's not much known about them. And I was hoping to research them as well, maybe create something of that. Um, and I also noticed that, like, in terms of the perfumery thing, I know that there's a book that exists, but there's also some UPG as well in there, corresponding to Greek entities like Hermes and whatnot. Perfumes that would hurt, like perfumes that would be associated with him, or scents in general. Um, but I'm wondering if that would align with my own essentially, and so I want. There's also a lot of demons that don't have correspondences, I notice, and as mentioned, I had to build an N for Kelly, like channel one, and I was just considering maybe just doing that for like demons that don't really have anything documented on them. I was just gonna drop it, uh, but a divine entity was has encouraged me to continue it, just even if it's just for myself, that I have something to refer to. So I'm going to continue with that as well.
Was it? Was it your
Uh,
patron or was it someone else?
no, it was
Fair
someone
enough.
else. Um, yeah, and they asked that in return, for because I also asked for help in other ways, that I would at least dedicate part of the book to them if it ever comes to be, and I agreed. So their name will be in it.
You have so many ideas. How many of these do you think you can do in a year?
Oh, not I would not be able to do any of them in a year, I don't think, except for maybe the kitchen witchery thing. That could maybe be done within like a few months max, because kitchen witchery is very much up to interpretation in many ways, and it's very personal. Um, so that will be fine. But the one regarding herbs, you instantly come to old wives' tales pretty much when you're trying to find historical magical uses. And then everything just goes like, oh, mythologically, Zeus used this for X, Y, Z, and it's just, oh no, it's happening again. Because I just want to find actual uses for it that has been documented and in rituals, like the ancient like Romans used to use like rosemary for keeping themselves more alert, more awake, more focused. And I was hoping to do a book on that, but also Rosemary just quickly goes into like Christian territory as well. That's associated with the Virgin Mary as well and whatnot. So it's kind of trying to find stuff that isn't just mythology, and written in like just Bibles. I want to find something that's a little more concrete than that. That's the difficult part.
That is still quite a lot. I mean, so people that follow you should expect a book on perhaps kitchen witchery next.
I suppose so. Yes.
And then in 5 years, you're just gonna drop a super tome on us with some other ideas, eh?
Maybe I'm not sure if these will actually amount to anything, but I'm going to try. Because I just find the topics
Yeah,
interesting. So hopefully
I'm
inviting.
so
Yeah.
impressed because like that is such unique topics. Like, yeah, I write those. Yeah, I want to read them.
Thank you. I'll do my best.
And what's next for you spiritually? Is there like any area that you want to investigate?
At the moment with demonology, I'm hoping to just continue my meditation practices with King Paimon and become more in tune with him. But I realize that I also have to do a considerable amount of shadow work. And I think that that's the unfortunate next step that I will be taking. I am not looking forward to it.
um, are the themes of shadow work a secret or not?
Part of it is a secret, yes,
Okay.
and the other section will be more relating to, let's say, anxiety, related topics, yeah,
Oof.
those would be the main ones.
Oh God, I
So,
wouldn't even know how to work through that.
It's a work in progress. I've already thankfully overcome one issue with my shadow self and come to terms with it, but there are other parts that you have to get kind of creative with it. um, yeah, it's definitely a work in progress, but here's hoping that it won't last too terribly long and it will all be okay.
I've done like so much shadow work, and then there's still like so many things left to do that I feel like just kind of got shelved. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just well, for one thing, I'm a very stressy, anxiety-ridden person in general. So I just kind of outsourced my spiritual balance to Lucifer, which works pretty well. Just you
It's
manage
not
my anxiety. I'm not managing my anxiety.
something I never considered before, really. I have a thing where I need to try to do it myself, and if I've tried and I tried and just to no avail, that's when I'll ask for help. But I'm very reluctant to do so.
I think
I think it's just a personal
I think
trait.
he enjoys when I rely on him because that was another thing that I had to overcome of like you're always trying to do things by yourself. Like, learn
Yeah.
to cooperate.
It's definitely, like, cooperate once you feel like you've tried, everything. King Paimon is very fine with stepping back and just watching you, like, stumble around and trying to actually figure it out, and then it's just like, "Oh, you want my help? That's okay. I'm waiting for you.
um,
I was waiting for you."
there's like another thing where I have grown up to be so shy because as a child, the good child was one that wasn't really heard or seen. Apparently, I was very obedient and well behaved because everyone was like, oh, you bring her to an adult conversation and she just sits there. And it's like, yeah, I was taught to do that. But with that, I ended up being like unable to sing or dance even for myself. And like the spirits were like, "Oh, don't worry, we're gonna break that eventually." And I'm like, I don't want to do that shadow work.
Yeah. The parts where it becomes, like, part of real life and having to actually focus on that,
Actually
that's the one that
confront
yeah.
that. Like, I have a feeling that
Yeah.
that's just gonna come out in some sort of very weird way. Like, for one of the voice acting projects, my husband will be like, and in this segment, you're singing. And I will be like, oh no.
I think it would actually be good, if I'm honest with you. It'll be the beginning of, forcing yourself to confront that
I
part.
mean, yeah, it's
Um,
good,
yeah.
but you know that that's
Oh, yeah.
looming out there in the distance. And you're like, I don't want to
Yeah.
do that, but I will have to do that.
I'm trying to work on being less anxious as well in regards to social situations because it's just unfortunately, "Oh, people. Oh, no." Uh, for the most part. So there's also something there too.
Yeah, I'm
And relating to the voice acting projects as well, accepting that people are can just be outright terrible, and you just gotta I don't know, I've seen some scathing things, uh, but just coming to terms with, like, I don't think that of myself. They can have their opinion, and it's absolutely fine, but it's water off my back. I don't care for a grand majority of it. And it's working on trying to make that 100%, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying to work on like speaking with other people through interviews like this. Like it helps with this one that I know you, so it doesn't
Yeah.
actually cause me stress. But like I did film an interview with another guy that's not on YouTube yet because it's gonna be on their channel if they choose to release it. And boy was that hard because he's an introvert and it's very hard for him to speak to people. I'm an introvert, so it's like it just involves a lot of laughing and giggling because that's how I deal whenever I'm stressed. Which makes me seem very friendly, fortunately.
Unfortunately, oh, you want to seem like intimidating. No, I entirely know what you mean. Because when you're a lot of the time, it's very strange. Sometimes it's either I'm terribly anxious about this person I'm going to speak to, particularly if I know it's coming. But if I'm just kind of plopped into a situation sometimes, and it's just maybe one or two people, I will be very chatty, and I will just explore all the topics, and then all of a sudden, just introverted again.
Oh,
And it's very very strange, and I wish I could just turn that part off, but keep the extroverted part up. I used to be a very extroverted child, um, but as I got older and you know the way even in schools there are cliques and you're not gonna fit into those cliques, that was the entire school, pretty much. So, that actually had an impact, and I gotta work on that.
I need to let my cat
Uh,
out. Give me a sec.
okay.
On that note, I don't think that I ever had fit in a school outside of like second grade.
2nd grade, what is that in year?
Second year, second
Yeah,
year
I
of
got you.
school.
Yeah, I feel you. I met one person, and that was when I approached them because they were also alone, and I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And then we made friends, and we were friends for quite some time. But it's just typically when you know someone else is kind of alone, you sort of get the feeling that they're going through what you're doing, is or going through as well. So I approach people like that. It's fine one on one, but if there's more than one, there's an issue.
It's like I started my first elementary school, and I actually made friends there. Like I actually
Yeah.
there were some weird issues. Like one boy was in love with me and tried to strangle me. That was definitely weird. Um,
I'm sorry, what? This is an interesting childhood you've
I
had.
know.
What's on earth?
Where they were like, oh, he's just really frustrated because he really likes you, but uh,
That's not how you would properly express, affection. You do not express affection with strangling people. That is very weird.
I mean, I had like girl friends there that actually liked me, and I liked them, and I belonged fairly well. Um, then, because my mother was gonna soon move to a different region, I got transferred to a different school in advance. And with that
Ah,
class, it was a lot more bullying, where one girl was even like, if you don't share your Barbies with me, then I'm not gonna be friends with you. And then I was like, then I'm not gonna be friends with you. But they had cliques, and the cliques have taken the girls' bathroom as like a weird clubhouse. And if anyone needed to use the bathroom, they would ask for a password. And if you didn't have the password, they wouldn't let you in. So I had to use a lot of teachers' help just to do things like go to the bathroom, and I completely did not fit in. And then I had a surgery, and because I started going to middle school, I transferred to a different class, which apparently made the other class pretty angry. So I already had like angry people at me in that middle school. But because I was a sick child and spent like 2 years away from school, like I spent 1 year away from school, then like I think 1 or 2 years in school, and then 1 year away from school again. And the new class that I was in, I never like properly bonded with them. So the only person that I was allowed to speak with in that collective was a girl that was very unfortunate for her. It was decided by everyone else to be a retard. Like they were like, oh, she
what?
has like intelligence difficulties, so she's completely excluded. So that was like the only person that I could ever speak with, and it didn't help because she had issues with thinking and braining things. She also wasn't a
Hmm.
very good student, so teachers would yell at her a lot, like drag her into
Oh,
the corridor and yell at her. And I was with her for those times as well. And I hope that that person's okay because I haven't checked up on them in the longest time, but I know that she didn't graduate anything past the 10th grade. Um, that she got a child with a man that probably was never gonna be with her. But she was working with like as a male woman and she was enjoying her child. So I was like, hey, maybe life turned out okay for her. But I was just feeling so bad for her during the school experience. And then I was transferred yet again into a private school where the only time I actually had any friendly interactions with anyone was like right at the end of school because once again people were promoting this image that they're like, the cool kids. And at the end of school when everybody has lessons at different times, you sometimes end up just sitting in the corridor. And then you realize that those people were having quite a lot of problems themselves. They just like never disclosed
wow.
it.
Uh, in particular to the second last one, that is awful. Like I remember in school, you know the whiteboards that I just got a marker from the shop and started drawing on it. And one chick was like, "Hey, can I have a land of your marker?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'm just using it." And she's like, "No, I want it now." And she tried to drag me to the ground for that by pulling me by the hair.
Oh.
So we got into a fight. I pulled her to the ground and started laughing at her because she lost, just to get my own back. Because she was not a very nice person. Because you don't start pulling people's hair just because they didn't lend you a marker right away.
I just
There were a few scuffles, but not many. But there was a rumor about the school that there was a certain room that you're not allowed to go into because it was haunted. And why was it haunted? Because one of the students went in there with a rope, stood on a chair, and you know,
hmm.
and that's why it was haunted. And I followed that trend by terrorizing other younger students with the same story because I thought it was
Oh
funny.
god, you were a bully.
I'm not a nice person. I'm not a nice person. That was the only bullying that I did though. I told scary stories. That was my issue. That's bullying? Telling scary stories is bullying?
But like you outright won like a fight with a girl, and then you follow up with, "Oh, and I loved scaring young people."
Hey, it wasn't as it's not that bad. They were almost my age. We were like, what, 14, 15? They screw it, they're fine. They lived.
it,
They
it
were
just
fine.
sounds like you were the cool
Yeah.
person at school.
I had very little friends. I had one friend, and I kind of met a group as a result, but I did not have any mutual like interests with basically any of them. Um, and that lasted for a while, until said friend would just stop asking me to accompany them to places, and I had to start asking them. And it got to the point where I got fed up and I just stopped. And that's when friendship ended. Nobody is now new friend. So that's what happened in school. I wasn't like that. That was about a 3 4 year friendship. I was also friends with another girl. I still am in contact with her, but she's not very nice. So yeah, she changed schools and then just became not very nice. It's funny how people change just because of the influences of people around them. Yeah.
Did
Um,
what about like uni or college?
In college, like, I didn't really talk to many people then either. I spoke with like one person, and you see, I don't like interrupting other people, especially when they're in groups, because I feel like I'm probably intruding, and I got to work on that. That's part of the shadow work. I feel like I'm intruding on people's conversations or intruding on their enjoyment of said conversation and that I would be maybe a burden to that. So I just didn't interact if they were in a group. Uh, I suppose it's carried over from childhood because if there was the cliques, then you weren't allowed in. Pretty much, it was kind of like what you mentioned very, very early on, but without as much bullying.
It,
Just a lot more name
yeah,
calling.
university was just very awkward for me because it was more of the fact that I somehow managed to not really share interests of people around me, despite the fact that we all had the interest in the degree that we were doing. Um,
It's
but
yeah, it's
it was
sorry.
like all pretty much all boys, and I did try to fit in because they liked things like Magic the Gathering cards, and I like even collected a deck that honestly wasn't very good, and I tried to join in, but I just couldn't make conversation. So everyone kind of stayed an acquaintance for me.
Yeah, it kind of winds up like that a lot, actually. Where you just kind of you're acquainted, but I didn't stay in contact with anyone basically. Um, the only thing is, like, I have a few online friends that I have been in contact with for a few years, and you just kind of I contact them maybe once in a while, but that's kind of it. Not so much in real life people.
Yeah, I have a lot of online friends. Like,
Yeah, it's way easier to just communicate online because it's just like, "Hi, do you like this thing?" "Yes, I like this thing." "How long have you enjoyed this thing?" "A really long time. I'm glad you like this thing."
uh,
You know?
like
It's
our
easier.
shared cover artist is the person that I go to like almost daily to bitch at. Effectively, something happens in my life, and I just go to that chat and go, "I must share now." And they do that back sometimes, but not as much. And I feel kind of
Mm.
bad sometimes because sometimes they will share something like earth shattering, and you realize that they didn't even like expand on it. Like, hey, something really important happened in my life. Here's like a two-word sentence, meaning, well, meanwhile, something like minor happens in my life, and I just write a whole paragraph to them.
That's natural.
Yeah.
It's natural to kinda do that. A lot of people do that,
And
don't worry about it.
then I just have that um, Polish friend who has stayed friends with both me and my husband for a very, very long time. So that's interesting how just like some people just, end up entering your life and just staying. And it's weird because after a while, the people that you have never met become more of a family than like the people that you have met for perhaps. Like, I would be more likely to travel to Poland than I would be to travel to my birth country to see my family.
Oh, I understand that part where people do just start feeling like family. To a lesser extent, I don't communicate with many people, especially not about problems anymore or anything. I just kind of work that out of myself. I don't tell anyone about things so much. And it's not like, it's kind of like bottling it up in a way, but also just working through it in a healthy way, pretty much, through shadow work. But yeah, totally understand what you mean with that. Like people just who aren't your family just start feeling like family. But I'm sorry about the other part, because that's not cool. That's not
It's
fun.
okay. I mean, part of my family is whom I kind of disconnected this year. And it's been going a lot better ever since.
Well, that's good to hear. That's the good part of that, and the really nice silver lining.
Yeah, anyway,
And I am glad for you. Sorry, I'll
I
stop
am
now.
gonna end the video here. It's been very personal, and I'm absolutely certain that our shared cover artist will want to hear all about that one. I eventually upload it. Thank you for being here, YouTube, and I'm gonna see you in a lot less personal interviews. Well, actually, I might be interviewing my cover artist, and that might end up being just as personal because they're also my friend. It tends to be less personal with strangers. Anne, do you have anything to share to YouTube? Like, I don't know, buy my books here or like something like that.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I do appreciate it. And I suppose, okay, if you were interested in my books at all, I will provide the link hopefully through comment or something. But you can find meditations on King Paimon or King Paimon, right, depending on how you pronounce it, preferably. Meditations on King Paimon, spiritual ramblings of King Demon of the West. I guess I will put link maybe somewhere to that. But yeah, I'm also on Ichio. It's Kovyn, Kovynn on Ichio. If you're interested in just reading the books for free, they're both the same. Just one has you have the option of physical copy. That's all.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna end the video now.